I bet you weren't expecting Martha. This face has trained generations of clinicians. It's motionless. It's always ready. It never panics. It doesn't sweat. It doesn't breathe. Sometimes it blinks, but she can't wink. And that's kind of the problem, isn't it? Because the first real day on the job doesn't look like a lab. The real first day on a job looks like a human being looking at you, saying, I can't breathe. Not, I have asthma, or I'm in heart failure, or this is anaphylaxis. It's just, I can't breathe. And instantly, the gap shows itself. The distance between knowledge and clinical judgment. Now, I worked in a community hospital as an emergency paramedic, and I taught in the local college. I know that moment, and I know how hard it is to replicate it in a skills lab, realistically. Now, last year, I was privileged to stand up in front of about 70 clinical educators, nursing faculty from all over the country, and I asked them one simple question. How many high-fidelity simulations do your students do on average across their entire degree, 2 years or 4 years? And their response surprised me. 4 to 6. 4 to 6 times where it feels real, where the learner has to speak to the patient, has to investigate, decide, escalate, and then act. And then they graduate. And they're expected to make clinical judgments and clinical judgment calls patient after patient on day 1. So we train for a job of rapid fire clinical judgment with practice that's scarce. And then we all act shocked when 60% of new travel nurses are labeled as do not rehire, and we all learned today 50% of nurses quit their jobs and 30% leave the profession in the first 2 years of employment. Look, this isn't a story about educators failing. This is a story about a system hitting its ceiling. For more than a century, we've been anchored to the same model. High fidelity simulation as a scheduled event. It's on site, it's staffed, it's orchestrated. Students, they rotate in groups. They're constrained by rooms and budget and faculty time. And a single high fidelity mannequin can cost $150,000 or more. So we ration repetitions. We ration the team lead moments and the very thing that builds clinical judgment. And then we send people into the world that doesn't ration decision making. Now, this is where it gets really interesting because healthcare isn't the only field facing this ceiling. In my work in the XR ecosystem, and XR means like VR headsets and AR headsets, I've tested immersive simulations in firefighting where you're wearing a full oxygen mask and you have a VR headset on your face and a tank on your back, and the tank is actually the computer, and then you have a nozzle with a hose and you're trying to control chaos, putting out a plane or putting out a building without actually burning one to the ground and breathing in the fumes just for a practice session. Construction and engineering, practicing hazardous workflows, equipment safety, putting on virtual hard hats, and then making design decisions before they become accidents. Interviewing and public speaking, testing the human side of performance, measuring clarity, confidence, composure when you're standing in front of a room full of people watching you, making you feel really nervous. Aviation, military, surgery, where high stakes practice, proficiency is mission critical. These are all different industries, but the pattern is the same. when the stakes are high, competency requires frequency, and frequency requires a new tool. Up until the last few years, we didn't actually have a way around this ceiling. High fidelity simulation required rooms, operators, scheduling, orchestration, but something's changed. 3 legs of the tripod have come together. The hardware matured. Untethered compute arrived. The software matured, and AI made scenarios more realistic, more dynamic, unexpected, and the urgency matured. We cannot wait for the perfect moment. We are short-staffed in multiple industries. That combination opens a door that we've never had before, and it's a path to continuous high-fidelity practice, not episodic, rationed events. I call it the continuous cycle of immersive practice, or the CCIP. This does not replace everything with VR, okay? The didactic stays. The simulation labs, they stay. Clinical rotations stay. But now, we add a loop around all of it. Continuous, immersive practice. Not 4 to 6 repetitions in a program, but hundreds and then thousands of safe, repeatable, realistic simulations. Every day becomes a sim day. And here's the only question that matters for all industries, but particularly in healthcare. Can we make a person ready before day 1 on the job? And if we can, why are we still rationing realistic practice? Picture the learner that you care about most. They sit through a lecture on respiratory distress, and then after class, they take their headset home. That night, they put on a VR headset, and they step into a patient encounter. And the patient looks at them and says, "I can't breathe." And the learner has to speak, not read a PowerPoint slide. They have to investigate, not guess. They have to decide, not memorize. They make mistakes, and they repeat, and they get better. They build clinical judgment. And then they come back into the sim lab the next day with faculty, not to experience the scenario for the very first time, but to deepen it, to debrief it, to ask better questions. And then the next day after that, they go into a real clinical with a real person. They walk into that patient's room, and instead of thinking, "I hope I don't freeze," it's, "I've been here before." And that shift matters because confidence isn't fluff. Confidence is competence under stress. Confidence is retention of your students, your new hires, your employees. We have incredible educators. We have incredible sim centers, but we also have a century-old pattern that quietly rations practice. And in healthcare, the cost of rationing practice gets paid at the bedside. So here's my call to action. It's not to buy anything. It's not to worship technology, but to change the way we think. Stop treating high-fidelity simulation as exclusive events and start treating it as a continuous cycle of immersive practice. The future of education isn't a better lab. It's a better loop. A loop where every learner gets what we've always wanted to give them, but we never really could at scale. Safe, repeatable, realistic practice before it's real. Because someday the patient might be you. Thank you.